This is Walter Bosley, and I'll be reading a selection from Sacred Places, 101 Spiritual Sites Around the World by Brad Olsen. Southeast Asia. The evolution of religion in Southeast Asia is one of the most fascinating accounts on earth. Ancestor worship and animism, the belief that natural phenomena and inanimate objects possess spirits, prevailed in both mainland and peninsular Southeast Asia prior to the arrival of Hinduism and Buddhism in the first millennium and the subsequent advent of Islam and Christianity. Even today, ancestors and spirits are revered in sculptural form as well as in nature. Interestingly, the interaction and intermingling of Hinduism and Buddhism with indigenous traditions assimilated native beliefs into mainstream Hindu and Buddhist practice. The polytheistic nature of Hinduism allowed great diversity of practice and worship, with Vishnu, Shiva, Durga, and Ganesha figuring most prominently in Southeast Asia. From its inception, Buddhism was a proselytizing faith that spread throughout India and the Himalayas, and later across Central Asia into China, Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia. Wherever Buddhism emerged, it developed different schools and complex philosophical systems. Buddhist sculptures were created to decorate temples and as primary objects of devotion. By the 15th century CE, Islam had established itself throughout much of insular Southeast Asia. Islam is based on the faith and practice of religion set forth in the Quran, the oneness of God, Allah, and the primacy of the Prophet Muhammad. In the 16th century and later, Christian missionaries converted most of the population of the northern Philippines to Christianity. Burma. The art and architecture of Burma, much like that of Thailand, was largely produced in the service of Theravada Buddhism, which was introduced from India in the 5th century. The practice of accumulating merit, or karma, through donations to religious establishments resulted in the construction of large ceremonial temples and monasteries all over the country, especially along the Irrawaddy River. It is said that Buddhism is the heart of Burma. Scattered across the country are countless testaments to the faith. Some of the most notable sacred sites are well populated, others totally deserted. Smack in the center of the capital, Rangoon, is the Dagon Pagoda, containing ancient relics of Gautama Buddha, including a 320-foot golden bell embedded with precious stones. A taxi ride from Rangoon takes you to Pegu, site of a 180-foot sprawling statue of a reclining Buddha. In Mandalay, near Mandalay Hill, is the Kayak Dogyi Pagoda, which contains an enormous image of the Buddha carved from a single block of marble. The Kuthodan Pagoda contains 729 white marble tablets that preserve ancient Buddhist text and scripture. Pagan. In the 9th century, the Burmese people migrated from southeastern China and founded the city of Pagan on the banks of the Irrawaddy River. While expanding their political power, they endowed religious institutions and constructed stupas, making Pagan a fantastical city of temples. At its peak, between 1056 to 1200 CE, Pagan, formerly named Aramadhanapura, had more than 10,000 Buddhist structures. Today, more than 2,000 temples and stupas still remain to make up the 16 square miles of Pagan. The ancient city remains mostly unoccupied in the baking hot sun. Some temples have decayed into nothing more than gravel hills, while others are beautifully preserved, each containing impressive statues of the Buddha. Pagan is the Buddhist cradle of Burmese civilization. Stone images of the Buddha adorn the interior of most Pagan temples and tell fascinating stories. Encircling the exterior statue of the Buddha are glazed terracotta plaques representing the previous lives and the historical life of the Buddha. Many of the statues in the lower niches show the stages from birth to nirvana of the bodhisattva. Also present in many pagan temples are representative Buddha footprints on pedestals, perhaps indicating a previous pilgrimage. The most impressive of all monuments at Pagan is the Ananda Temple, literally divine love in Sanskrit. Founded in 1091 CE, Ananda is best known for its monumental size of 17 stories and the abundant images of the Buddha. Ananda and its sister temple, Thot Binyu, are both over 800 years old and graced with 30-foot gilded Buddhas with their hands in different positions, representing the attainment of nirvana. Inside Ananda is a maze of corridors fashioned with inset statues of the Buddha and plaques inscribed in Mon script. The catacomb-like structure contains a wide variety of colossal and small statues of the Buddha. Also interesting is a stone block in the center of Ananda, whose four sides face directly north, south, east, and west. Four standing statues of the Buddha stare out at the four cardinal points in blissful meditation. Pagan continued as the political and cultural center of Burma until the Mongol invasion of 1287 CE. Kublai Khan and his army sacked the city and began dismantling some of the buildings for military purposes. After the Mongol invasion, the empire fragmented into rival states, and the capital continued to move as each king sought to establish his own kingdom. This started the period of decay that is still in progress today. Pagan lies northwest of Rangoon on the east bank of the Irrawaddy River. There are daily flights to the nearby airport at Nwangju and from Mandalay. Buses and taxis ply these routes daily. Burma is just opening up to foreign visitors after many years of governmental repression and extreme poverty. For the first time in a long while, freestyle travel is permitted within Burma, but tread lightly. Cambodia. At one time, Cambodia was the major power of Southeast Asia. The once mighty Angkor Empire, which 800 years ago stretched into what is now Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, and the Malay Peninsula, was ruled by a succession of strong-armed kings. Before the Angkor kings, the first Cambodian civilization was the 3rd century CE kingdom of Funan, which began as a successful trading post called Chenla, southeast of the present-day capital, Phnom Penh. Funan acted as a buffer between India and China, two mighty empires that greatly influenced the development of Cambodia. Pilgrims and traders traveling the land and sea routes between India and China brought new religious and architectural ideas to Cambodia, eagerly adapted by the Khmer rulers. These early kingdoms of Funan and Angkor paid tribute to China while adopting many elements of Indian culture, including its style of dress, eating, Sanskrit writing system, and the Hindu religion. Modern politics and internal conflict have ensured that we are familiar with the ancient name Khmer. In old times, Khmer was the name of the people who built the temples of Angkor. Today, it is the Khmer Rouge, a band of guerrillas still wreaking havoc in the jungles near the Thailand border. The Khmer Rouge, led by Pol Pot, were responsible for killing more than 1 million fellow Cambodians during their reign of terror in the mid-1970s. Stark reminders of genocide, re-education camps, and the infamous killing fields are apparent on any visit to Cambodia. Angkor. The sprawling site of Angkor was first founded by King Jayavarman, who proclaimed himself the universal monarch during his reign from 802 to 850 CE. It was this powerful ruler who unified his kingdom and initiated large building projects for his new capital. Although few of his original buildings survive, it was Jayavarman who put the unique stamp on Khmer religion and renamed the country Kamboja, an early version of Kampuchea or Cambodia. In what is regarded as the world's largest temple complex, Successive kings added their own monuments in and around Angkor. Covering more than 135 square miles, it is a patchwork of sandstone temples, chapels, causeways, terraces, and reservoirs. Adorning the temple walls are thousands of carvings depicting battles between gods, sensual dancing women, royal processions with kings riding elephants, and many depictions from classical Hindu mythology. Basically, each complex was built for and commemorates the god-king who commissioned its construction. Each temple complex of Angkor acted as the king's capital during his lifetime, then his tomb upon death. The most magnificent and best preserved of all Angkor temples is Angkor Wat, constructed by King Suryavarman II at the height of the Khmer Empire in the 12th century. 5 huge towers dominate the sky at Angkor Wat, while the long causeways and wide pools give the visitor a sense of freedom in space. Angkor Wat is considered the best example of Khmer architecture at its most refined state. Composing a half-square mile, Angkor Wat uses its massive proportions to astonish any visitor. Like monuments in Egypt, there is a long approach to the temple, an imposing entry foyer, followed by a center temple rising like a pyramid on 3 superimposed terraces. Angkor Wat is a complex of great drama, utilizing various courtyards, towers, a large moat, and various ancillary buildings. The 4 towers on each corner and the central tower in the middle replicate a mountain-like appearance, which some experts believe to represent Mount Kailas, the center of the universe to both Hindus and Buddhists. Whatever Angkor Wat was modeled after remains conjecture, but there certainly are both Hindu and Buddhist elements represented, together with a liberal dose of king worship. Those visiting Angkor today should not just set their sights on Angkor Wat. Although dazzling in its own right, Angkor Wat is one of many highlights from this prolific age of Khmer temple building. Another capital site, Angkor Thom, has a great temple called the Banyan, which rivals Angkor Wat in size and beauty. Banyan is most famous for the 200 magnificent, slightly smiling stone faces. Some 70 other temples and monuments adorn the area, but many are off limits to foreigners because of continuing turmoil and unexploded landmines. The many temples of Angkor are located in northwestern Cambodia, situated just north of the town Siem Reap. The current political tensions in Cambodia are quite volatile, and access to Angkor may be prohibited or considered too dangerous. Tourists have been targeted by Khmer Rouge terrorists, yet intrepid travelers still make their way to these fascinating temples year after year. From Phnom Penh, there are buses, trains, flights, and a boat route over Tonle Sap Lake to Siem Reap. Check danger levels and accessibility to Angkor before departure. Indonesia. Almost all the ancient history of Indonesia lies on the long and narrow island of Java. The first to settle here 500,000 years ago was Pithecanthropus erectus, a primitive humanoid also known as Java Man. The Indian and Chinese traders arrived around the century of Christ and brought with them their own religions, Hinduism and Buddhism. The great monuments of Java are either Hindu or Buddhist, or more likely combinations of both. The Buddhist sanctuary of Borobudur and the Hindu complex of Prambanan stand as proud testaments of architectural glory from the 8th and 9th centuries CE. Shortly after, Islam swept through Java and still today remains the official religion of Indonesia. Borobudur. On top of a hill covered with volcanic ash lies a fantastic stupa complex of shrines dedicated to the Buddha. The name is Borobudur, meaning monastery of accumulated value. Philosophically, the association of Buddha and stupa is most neatly stated in an aphorism from a medieval Javanese text, quoting, "The body of the Buddha is a stupa," end quote. This Mahayana Buddhist stupa temple is the premier architectural masterpiece of Indonesia. Erected by the Sailendra, or Kings of the Mountain dynasty in the 8th century CE, the building has 9 levels. The building, featuring stone terraces mounting on a pre-existing mound, rises 140 feet above the surrounding rice fields. On the higher tiers, there are 72 bell-shaped stupas containing statues of the Buddha. Lower galleries contain more than 1,300 relief panels depicting the symbolic life of the Buddha. The stupa consists of 6 square terraces that are in turn surmounted by 3 circular terraces. In all, each facade has 108 Buddha statues, a number that is considered auspicious in Indian numerological systems. The stupa is a symbolic representation of the Mahayana Buddhist cosmological view of the universe. The lower level depicts humankind's monumental place in the world, bound by rebirth under the karmic law of cause and effect, and owing to humans' unceasing attachment to desire. The higher square terraces have highly artistic relief carvings depicting the life of Gautama, the Buddha, and the Bodhisattvas, high virtue beings destined for Buddhahood. The uppermost square terrace is transitional, passing to 3 circular terraces bearing 72 latticed dagoba, arranged in a concentric circle around the central one. The upper depictions represent the formless states reached by a Buddhist disciple after detaching themselves over incredibly long periods of time from the human desires that bind mortals to the wheel of life. To climb Borobudur is to ascend symbolically from hell to the temporal and finally celestial worlds. As a testament in stone, Borobudur is remarkable, but even without its religious implications, the art of the carved reliefs would ensure it a high place among the world's great buildings. Unfortunately, Borobudur was shaken severely by an earthquake and much defaced by the Muslims who left it to ruin. It was rediscovered and partially restored by a British expedition in 1815. The structure's foundation was in threat of collapsing until the Indonesian government, with aid from UNESCO and private donations, undertook a major renovation program. The restored Borobudur monument is now nearly at its original grandeur, as the work was completed in mid-1983. From above, the design of Borobudur resembles a mandala, a Hindu pattern used in meditation, leading to speculation that the complex was built by Indian Buddhists who were influenced by Hindu beliefs. Viewed from the ground, the mandala comes together to form a mountain of stone. Mountain peaks, according to Buddhist thought, are the place where contact with divine truth may be made. Pilgrims today and yesterday would climb Borobudur level by level, drawing closer and closer to complete infusion by divine wisdom. Essentially, the pilgrim experienced nirvana on earth. Borobudur is located 30 miles northwest of Yogyakarta. Private taxis are the most convenient mode of transportation, but most expensive. If you go by bus, first go to the town of Muntalan, and there change to the local bus that passes Borobudur. The round trip takes about 4 hours from Yogyakarta. Prambanan. The neighborhood of Yogyakarta in the middle of Java is well known for its wealth of architectural remains. This region, known as the Prambanan Plain, has the largest concentration of ancient temples in Indonesia, some 50 in all. It was during the Middle Javanese or Classical period, the 8th and 9th centuries CE, when the influences of Indian traditions, especially religions, swept the island. There are numerous sites from this and later periods spread widely over central Java, the most notable being Borobudur and Prambanan. Prambanan is a grouping of temples, mostly Hindu, but featuring some Buddhist images. Almost all the buildings were constructed in the second half of the 9th century CE under the Hindu Mataram dynasty. Nearby are the Buddhist Kalasan Siwu and Pausan temples, constructed about the same time as the others. Kandi Sambasari Temple was discovered in 1966 when a farmer's plow hit a stone that turned out to be the top of the largest temple to be found intact in Java. The temple complex of Prambanan is sometimes called Kandi Larajanggrang, named after the statue of the Cursed Maiden to be found in the north room of the largest building dedicated to Shiva. The statue is easily identified because of her broken-off nose and her shiny black breasts and belly worn smooth by fond caresses over the centuries. The main complex has a square inner court encircled by a wall. Within this court are 8 stone shrines, 3 in a row along the west side facing east, another row of 3 along the east side facing west, and 2 smaller temples between them. The largest temple in Prambanan is the Shiva temple, measuring 174 feet in height. The Brahma temple is to the south, and the Vishnu temple is to the north of the Shiva temple. The Shiva temple has 4 main rooms. In the central room is an image of Shiva, the destroyer and renovator of all things. The southern room contains Bhattara Guru, and the west room, the elephant-headed son of Shiva, Ganesh. In the north room is the image of the popular Cursed Maiden, after whom the complex is named. Prambanan is located 10 miles northeast of Yogyakarta along the Surakarta Road. Local buses and taxis ply the route hourly from Yogyakarta. Some of the temples are spread far across the Prambanan plain, so a good map or guide is necessary for taking in the whole site. Thailand. Some of the earliest traces of human culture can be found in Thailand. It is evident that Homo erectus passed through Thailand on his way down the Malay Peninsula, where his remains have been unearthed on the Indonesian island of Java. But the earliest traces of inhabitation come from the Ban Chang culture between 4000 BCE to 500 CE, named after the village of Ban Chang in northeast Thailand. Here was the earliest Southeast Asian culture to make jewelry and weapons out of bronze. The people of Ban Chang also produced beautiful earthenware pots, some embellished with curving and spiral designs. This early culture must have held a profound belief in the afterlife because many of these objects were found buried in graves. Like the Egyptians, they buried personal objects with the body so the deceased would have their necessary items in the next world. The art and architecture of Thailand were largely produced in the service of Theravada Buddhism, which was introduced from India in the 5th century CE. Thailand is the largest Buddhist nation in Southeast Asia and has nearly 20,000 temples and monasteries scattered throughout the cities and countryside. Although animism is practiced in the ubiquitous Thai spirit houses seen everywhere, its mixture with Buddhism is easily tolerated by the mellow Thai people. The result is the gentlest and most liberal form of Buddhism practiced today. Glittering Buddhist temples and shrines are scattered around Thailand. Most young men still become monks for a short time, usually for 1 year. Religious festivals and visits to Buddhist temples are an integral part of Thai life, but influences from the West are becoming more and more apparent, such as strip malls and Western fashion. Sukhothai. Several rival kingdoms emerged in the 13th to 15th century CE, of which the most notable is the kingdom of Sukhothai. After the king Phra Rang unified the country, Sukhothai became the site of the first Thai capital. Phra Rang was a fair and just ruler who became as legendary as King Arthur in England, with Sukhothai as his fabled court. Indeed, Sukhothai represented early Thai society in its purest form, when citizens were allowed to pursue their chosen livelihood. The name Sukhothai translates into the dawn of happiness. Sukhothai was originally founded by the Khmers, who left behind 3 buildings and a sophisticated water system like those they built at Angkor, Cambodia. After the Angkorian Empire abandoned the site, the Thais moved in and started constructing their own buildings. A massive wall protected the inner city, as well as 3 earthen ramparts and 2 moats. There are 20 Wats in the inner city and some 70 more in the neighborhood, most repeating familiar architectural themes. Unfortunately, the Thais eschewed the intricate Khmer irrigation system, and when the Yam River changed its course, the city dried up. This is believed to have led to the city's demise. The Thais of Sukhothai adopted Theravada Buddhism, while the strong early influence of the Khmers left behind images of Hindu gods such as Vishnu and Shiva. The elegant Buddha statues of Sukhothai, with their parrot's beak noses and elongated faces, were housed in Wats of brick, many of which can still be seen today. The meditating Buddha, sitting in a lotus pose with his hands resting in the gesture of meditation, conveys spiritual strength and solidity. Most statues of the Buddha were carved for placement by a Buddhist stupa or monastery. His elongated earlobes, the lotus marks on his palms, the cranial bump with the flame of wisdom, and the third eye of insight together identify the image of Buddha. There is no doubt that since the founding of Sukhothai, Buddhism has been deeply rooted in the Thai way of life. There is a new Sukhothai of modern buildings and an old Sukhothai where the ancient capital resides, about 7 miles apart. Public transportation from other Thai cities accesses new Sukhothai, where most of the accommodations and restaurants are, while people seeking the ruins of old Sukhothai usually take a shuttle or tuk-tuk out to the site. New Sukhothai is best reached by tour bus or a private vehicle up Route 1 to Tak, then Highway 105 West. Vietnam. Vietnam has always been an important trading center and watershed of religions. It has been more strongly influenced by China than any other Southeast Asian country. However, areas in the south drew inspiration from India up until the 16th century. Today, most Vietnamese are Buddhists, but this has not always been the case. Located in the south of the country, often on hilltops, are Hindu temples constructed from the 7th to 16th centuries CE. The interiors of these Hindu temples are small, leaving artistic decoration for the exterior. The idea behind these temples was to draw worshippers inside, where they could pay homage individually before the Hindu god of their choice, usually bringing incense or flowers to the altar. Buddhist temples of Vietnam, on the other hand, are quite large and are usually part of a larger complex. Like Christian monasteries, Buddhist monks have separate living quarters around a number of buildings for worship. The main hall, dedicated to the Buddha, can be rather large, and many images of the Buddha are placed upon the altar. Like Hindu temples, worshippers honor the Buddha individually. Kham Towers. The minority Kham people of Vietnam are an interesting and ancient subset of people. Kham people are more deeply pigmented than the Vietnamese and speak their own language, similar to Malay, in addition to Vietnamese. Kham men wear sarongs, short jackets, and sometimes colorful headwear, while the women wear long, buttonless indigo blue dresses. There is a strong matrilineal element in their social affairs. For example, some of the Khams are Hindu, who eat no beef and cremate their dead, while others are Muslim who eat no pork and bury their dead. Scattered across Vietnam are a number of characteristic brick towers, remnants of the much grander days of the Kham. The village of Dran, on the road to Phan Rang, contains relics of the Kham kingdom in the form of a silk coat, a golden crown, and other priceless objects. Other Kham villages are located mostly along the coastal plains in Ninh Thuan province and further north. Kham shrines were the focal points of political, economic, and social life. The Hindu-influenced realm of the Khams began as early as the 5th century CE and remained a powerful force through much of the later medieval period. Near Nha Trang is one of the oldest towers, the Po Nagar, built by King Suryavarman in 784 CE. There is an excellent tower just on the outskirts of Top Cham. Other notable Kham towers can be found in Hung Thon, further north near Ki Non, and especially at Mison, just south of Da Nang. At Mison is the 10th century CE shrine of Bhadrasvara, which was the spiritual center of the Kham. The Kham temple grounds are usually located in the oldest parts of the cities where they reside. This is Walter Bosley, and I've just read a selection from Secret Places by Brad Olsen.